Today I'm doing a video on IBM's venerable keyboard, the Model M. And you did read that title right. One of my Model M's is technically actually broken. And when I say one of, I do mean one of many. Yeah, I kinda like Model M's. Yeah, I've found my forever keyboard. And if all of these still aren't enough, I have enough parts to be able to rebuild 3 complete keyboards. But today I'm going to focus on just one of these, and I won't even need parts to repair it. We're going to be focusing on just this one. Although, actually, let's go ahead and make it 2. This one I haven't refurbished yet may be interesting on the inside. Now, if you're not familiar with the Model M, I'll go over some of the things that make it special. One of the things most people are drawn to is that it is a mechanical keyboard. Mechanical keyboards are fairly popular right now, and modern ones use Cherry MX switches. Now, I don't have a modern mechanical keyboard to compare this to, but I do have this one that has Cherry switches, although they are Cherry ML switches. It is technically a mechanical keyboard, although it's not really fair to compare it. Interesting side note about this keyboard, Cherry didn't just provide switches for this, they manufactured it. Now, unlike a Cherry MX switch, which closes a circuit to send a signal that the key has been pressed, the IBM's buckling springs release a lever that determines when a key is pressed. And if we pull off a key cap and a key stem, you can see the loose spring inside. All Model M's are older keyboards that use a PS2 interface to connect to the computer. However, depending on the model you have, you may need to use a separate cable to connect it to the computer. Here's the difference between 2 Model M's, one with a detachable cable and one without. Now, my desktop actually still has a PS2 port, so it's easy for me to hook up this keyboard. But if you want to try and bring this into the 21st century, you have 2 basic options. One is to get some sort of PS2 to USB adapter, or you could go direct and get a USB to SDL adapter cable. Personally, though, I like to use the blue PS2 to USB adapter. Now, if you're already familiar with the Model M, you'll know that these keyboards are famously durable. So, what has gone wrong with this keyboard? It's pretty minor. Now, both of these are hooked up to the same computer, and if I push a key over here to turn on the LEDs, you'll see that they're both doing exactly the same thing. And the only thing that has gone wrong with this keyboard is the numlock LED is not responding correctly. Now, the LED hasn't burnt out, because it responds intermittently sometimes. I can't seem to make it do anything this time, but trust me, it is turned back on. And we also know that the LED cluster here has power because these work. If I unplug the keyboard and plug it back in, you'll see both of those turn on, but not numlock. And all 3 should turn on as a power on test. So that's my flimsy pretext for making a Model M video, and I'm sticking to it. Now, one more thing that'll be important only if you want to work on one of these yourself is that these don't use Phillips screws. Instead, they use these hexagon screws with a 7/32 head. So they're kind of a pain to get out. Seeing as I own and operate a fleet of these, however, it was worth it for me to invest in a proper tool for getting those out. So let's go ahead and start cracking this thing open. Now, only these 4 screws stand between you and the inside of your Model M. These aren't screw holes, those are where rubber feet go, and I've taken them out because where I use this keyboard, they end up falling out constantly. Now, let's go ahead and open this, and we can see what's going on inside. Oh, that's filthy. Now, while this one seems pretty dirty inside, let's take a look at what the unrefurbished one looks like. And inside the dirty one looks like... well, that's really not that bad. We can pretty clearly see some liquid was spilled in it at some point, though. Now, this is somewhat interesting. Both of these are 1391401 keyboards, but they have very different construction here. I haven't seen this way of connecting to these yet, or this board either. Very interesting. Now, if you ever pick up a Model M and hear it rattle, or open it up and find these falling out, that's because on the back side of the steel plate where the keyboard assembly is mounted, it is plastic riveted in place. These plastic rivets age over time and start to break off. Now there's a way to fix this where you bolt mod the keyboard. You intentionally break off all of the plastic rivets and drill tiny holes through here and put a bolt and nut through in their place. I haven't done that to any of my keyboards yet. Sounds like an interesting project, so I may do it in the future. But for now, all of my keyboards are still plastic rivets. There's one more screw that grounds the electronics to the keyboard frame, and we need to take that off before we can really start here. Now we can start looking this over to find out where the problem is. Now I've reconnected the other end of this SDL cable to the USB port, and I have numlock on the computer, so when I plug this in, numlock should turn on, but it doesn't. So now I need to play with this to try and figure out where the problem is. So now this flex cable could have a tear or break in it somewhere, which would be really upsetting. So I need to double check its continuity. Then we grab a multimeter and do that now. First things first, I need to determine if these are common anode or common cathode. So if we connect, I need to try and find that one. It's probably this. 2.5 volts, so we are common anode. So if I flip these around and do the same measurement, we'll see negative. So, common anode, alright. So now, let's see if we can set this to diode and manually turn one of these on with the keyboard unplugged. I've now disconnected the ribbon cable on the other end, and let's see if we can turn these on by just doing diode test. Alright, we got that one. Yep. And yep. So all three diodes work. Now, let's see what happens if I try and connect to the ribbon cable. Now that we know the LEDs themselves work, we can test if the ribbon cable is broken. So I'm going to go ahead and just fold it over here and tape it down to make it easier to work with. And now I can probe directly on here. So I'm going to do the same test where I try to turn on the LEDs. And finally the broken one. Oh, we're getting some intermittence there. I feel like the problematic one is also not turning on as brightly. So I was doing a little bit more testing here, and while I can continue to get these working, now this one no longer turns on, and I know that it is the trace specific to it because that one isn't quite working right. So let's do this. Let's measure the resistance of each one of these. So fine thin trace is 34. Another one. Bouncing around, 26. Big fat one, 9. And the problematic one. Ah, yes. We are hot on the trail now. I'm going to see if I can make that change by reseating this. Well, it's more stable, but still terrible. Scratch into the contact a little bit, it's no better. See how these have changed. Still the same. So this one will be 26. Still the same. Alright. So there's something wrong with this trace on this flexible circuit. I've clipped onto the output pin of the connector here, and I'm going to try and move the flex cable around so I can figure out where the problem is. So there's a crease right about here, and I'm wondering if that could be related. Ooh. Seemed like something over here made a difference. Yeah, it's pretty tough to say where the problem is here. Now, while it isn't impossible to fix these flex circuit cables, it is very difficult, and I can't really find where the problem is on it. So instead, I'm going to do the guaranteed solution and just add an alternative conductor path. All I have to do is take this one wire and solder it from here to here, and the keyboard will be fully repaired. Alright, we'll just put a little bit of solder here and attach one side of the wire. Now this side's a bit trickier because I don't want to pull this whole board up because I don't want to replace the double-sided tape or try to align it to the holes on the front. Alright, now I'm going to try and connect this right alongside of there. And that's on. And now if we reconnect the ribbon cable, which goes in a very unfortunate angle on this. No, I'm not surprised it broke. It's not well designed here. Yeah, plug that back in and then plug this into STL and we should see, oh, all three, there we go. So now the numpad key light is fully functional. It's interesting how this will never be a problem on the one I haven't refurbished yet because it uses real copper wires. Those are never going to fail, especially being inside the keyboard. I'm really not sure how this managed to fail when it doesn't move inside of the keyboard, but it definitely did. So, alright, let's go ahead and put this back together now. Alright, well, this is once again a happy Model M with all of its typing glory. It has lost an alarming number of plastic rivets, I will admit. This might be a really good candidate for bolt modding, so I'm going to look into that some more and buy the hardware. But for now, it's definitely good to go back into service. Well, that pretty much covers the Model M. Thankfully, that was a fairly simple repair, and the keyboard is good as new. I hope that was entertaining, and I'll see you guys next time.